Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. I am thrilled to have Susannah Dellinger joining us today, all the way from Charleston, South Carolina. So, Susannah, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Vicki. Excited to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to hear more about your story, and to our listeners that have chimed in today, thank you so much for being here. We're going to talk about beauty, a multi-billion-dollar industry, and majority of you are women that listen to our podcast, and so Susannah's really got some great things that she's going to share with us about the beauty industry and marketing, and so we're thrilled to have her here, and we're thrilled to have you as our audience joining us today. So let me give you a little bit of background on Susannah so you know why I'm talking to her and why she happens to be an expert in this arena. So she worked for about 17 years as a top executive for leading luxury beauty brands: Trish McEvoy, Laura Mercier, Dr. Brandt Skincare, and those are just a few. And then she started a personal health journey when faced with sudden hormonal issues: adult-onset acne, unexplained infertility, and a devastating miscarriage. Soon she realized the ugly truth about the world of beauty, and it was doing more harm to both herself and to our planet than it was doing good. And so she began this discovery of effective brands with beautiful skincare and makeup products. And also, how do we give back? How do we have reusable packaging and minimizing beauty's footprint on our planet? So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it gives you some insight as to who Susannah is. And we're going to jump into questions so that she can tell us directly from herself some of her journey. So Susannah, just what led you? Now, you're the CEO of Bright Beauty Collective.
Yes.
Yes, and so tell us how you got to be the CEO of this fabulous company.
Thank you so much. Well, it was never the plan. I'll tell you that much.
Usually isn't.
It really is, right? I always joke that I am the world's least likely CEO. I went to school for theater. They don't really teach you how to make a business plan in theater when you're a theater major. However, you do, figure out how to fake it till you make it with a theater background, so that was useful. But to your point of my intro, I was in conventional beauty as an executive for almost 2 decades, and wound up in beauty because I was a struggling actress slash waitress slash all the slashes when I got married at a young age, and realized I shouldn't get an adult job that doesn't have me, out late auditioning, all these things. And a friend told me that if you go work at a beauty counter, you got free makeup. Well, I'll tell you, 20-some years later, I'm still in this industry for the free makeup. Okay?
Wow, okay. Now we know the motivation.
Nobody ever told me that you could have this huge career, that there's things like marketing and executives and leadership and training and education and all these great things. And I fell in love with it. I just loved playing with clients. I loved seeing women's and men's faces when they finally saw themselves how they wanted to be protected. I really believe in beauty as a tool of expression, just like clothing. You can be playful with it, and you can really present yourself to the world in lots of creative ways. And that, really spoke to me as a creative at heart. Then, like you said, all of a sudden, in my mid-30s, out of nowhere, I got horrible cystic acne. I should send pictures that would just go all the way down my body. Sometimes people go to a dermatologist to get 1 or 2 breakouts injected with cortisone. If people struggle with acne, they're familiar with that. My dermatologist would actually shoot my hip full of cortisone into my body.
Wow.
Because of how inflamed my entire system was. And nobody could figure out why this was happening. At the same time, I was trying to have a family, try to start my family with my husband. We'd been married quite some time, and it just wasn't happening, right? We were trying all the things that one tries, and I did get pregnant, and then I ended up, having a miscarriage. So again, a lot of hormonal balances, and doctors would tell me, let's look at what you're eating, let's look at your stress levels, and I started going down this rabbit hole of the food that I was eating, making sure everything was organic and no pesticides and all of these things to try to bring my hormones back in balance. And the YouTube algorithms that I was watching did their algorithm magic that they do. And I was being served videos about, at the time, it was called green beauty. Now it's become to call clean beauty.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, I know everything there is to know about beauty. This can't be real, right? And they're talking about toxicity of certain ingredients and how they can actually be endocrine, aka hormonal disruptors in women and also in men. And I was at the point, quite frankly, Vicki, where I was like, I'll try anything to fix this.
I can imagine.
Anything. So I would, put on my sunglasses and walk into stores where people hopefully wouldn't recognize me to buy some of these green beauty brands that weren't using certain ingredients. And it worked on my outward appearance, right? It wasn't overnight, but after a few months, right, my skin was clearing. I wasn't having these horrible, almost like rashes with the cystic acne that was going down my neck and my chest. It would like throb at night. It was so painful if I rolled over. All of a sudden, that was eliminating. And I then got naturally pregnant after being told that it wasn't going to happen. We had stopped all of the treatments, all the things, and we even sold our house because I didn't want to see the empty bedrooms. It was too hard of a reminder. We moved into a very small apartment, and I was very sick, and I realized I was pregnant. And I'm not saying it's because of switching out, starting to switch out products. I also left a very stressful, toxic job where I was flying 48 weeks out of the year. Quite a bit to be on an airplane. I was under a lot of stress, but within a month of me leaving that job and that career that had me around all this conventional beauty nonstop every day, suddenly I was, pregnant. And I started to think, what chance do these smaller brands have when they get into a Sephora or Blue Mercury? They're up against, to your point, this hundreds of billion-dollar industry, this machine that these massive machine that most brands are owned by. So even a brand that may seem small and indie, they're owned by a L'Oreal or they're owned by an Estee Lauder, right? And I was like, if only they could have the magic of a great sales and education team, because that's what I did as I ran sales and education teams. If only they had that magic behind them, they could really make an impact on our planet. Somebody should go do that for these brands. Not me, but somebody.
The idea was there.
What that answer was, and here we sit as a multi-million-dollar company later, having done exactly that.
Wow. Well, I first of all, let me say I'm so sorry that you had to go through everything you did, but clearly there was a reason that it's led you to where you are today, and it's helping so many other women. I was mentioning to you when we started our conversation that another guest that we had on had similar issues and was trying to go through IVF, and it was a similar type situation, but it was more about oral care. Yeah. And, she developed this product, a dental product, right? And so these things are happening, and women are, grasping for answers. How do we reverse this, or how do we correct this? And so these are two areas now that we know of for sure, beauty being one. Yeah. And so you've built the Bright Beauty Collective, which is fabulous, and that education piece. So when you talk about conscious beauty brands, what does that actually mean? And I'm asking that more from our audience perspective.
No, it's a great question, because even clean beauty, people are like, what does that mean? Because there is no regulation or standard in that. And if you go into one store, it means something than another store. If you go online, it means something different to each brand. So, we say we support clean and conscious, beauty brands. And for us, we have a really long list of things that we look at in a brand. The first and foremost is going to be ingredients, right? We look for brands that are formulating without known harmful ingredients. Let's just not use carcinogens. How about that? Let's just start right there.
Yeah, start with that.
Mind-boggling to me, quite frankly. I mean, when you work in an industry for as long as I had, you don't stop to think or question things because you're like, there's no way that would be happening. And then you look and you're like, oh, that's not fantastic. That one of the number one ingredients in most mascara is tar. Like, that's not great.
No,
right?
that is not great.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very, very small example, but the biggest thing for us is fragrance. And it can be a huge allergen just on its own. We all know that, a lung irritant. However, in the United States, fragrance is considered a proprietary ingredient, meaning the companies do not have to disclose what makes up their fragrance. So you can hide tens of thousands of different types of ingredients underneath the label of fragrance. And a lot of those are known endocrine disruptors, meaning that they cause hormonal imbalances. And what's even more fascinating that I learned is that it's not that it's just happening to humans. As we're washing the shampoo out of our hair, our body washes, as it's all going down into the waterways, fish species, marine life is dying off because they're not able to reproduce. If you look at, certain marine biologists have done reports on this steep decline that's happened since the early 1990s in this marine life and the different types of species out there. They've literally died off because of what we're putting in the waterways, even from a waste issue of, what the plants are producing, right? So I started to really go down this rabbit hole and understand the energy production that was behind so much. And then I read a stat that blew me away, which is that the number 2 polluter to our planet is the beauty industry. It's only outranked by oil and gas.
What? And that's never talked about, ever. Like, right?
Crazy.
Like, when you hear climate and you hear environment, it's always oil, gas, the carbon footprint from vehicles. Like you never hear beauty, and yet we're addicted as a society. We're addicted.
We love beauty, and
we love beauty.
And beauty should be fun. And I would never be the one to say, let's get rid of the beauty industry. I love the beauty industry, but how could this industry that I had such a deep love affair with be literally killing our planet? That was very hard for me to reconcile. So when I found these brands that were doing things such as using alternative energy sources, where their plants were solar or wind powered, where they're looking at, really conscious choices of packaging. So to answer your question, it starts with ingredients, but then it becomes about what does the packaging look like, right? Let's just not do virgin plastic. We don't need to do that, right? And being conscious too about the energy production, but then also ingredient sourcing. So many ingredients are being sourced from overseas in third world countries where it's causing deforestation issues, and communities are going and having crop imbalances that are killing off some of their own livelihood. So, okay, are the brands being really thoughtful and conscious about where they harvest ingredients? It's a very 360-degree view that we take with our brands, and there's no perfect answer. We just ask that a brand be conscious about the entire life cycle of a beauty product from seed to shelf.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I first of all, I love what you're doing. I think it's amazing. And that consciousness, if we could, even if we did 10%, look at the impact that you could have, right?
Talking about a projected $500 billion industry.
Right, exactly.
Right? Like, if you can start to turn that even one nodule at a time, real impact.
100%. Like that just is mind-boggling when you think about it. So conscious beauty is just like how, we say if there's more than 5 ingredients on a food label, you might want to question it.
Right.
So it's also starting to look at, and to your point, a lot of things are hidden, and we are creatures of habit where we are attracted to all the senses, right?
Smell being conditioned.
We are conditioned to that. And so, really thinking about how that fragrance smells. I know for myself, when my kids were younger, at school, it would be, you can't have any scent on when you come into the schools because so many kids were allergic. So I stopped wearing perfume. Right? And at first it was really hard because I was like, no, I love my, my scent. But now it's more like, and I've seen this on my daughter in particular, like she's highly, highly conscious of smell, right? And it can just set her off. And we don't think about those things, right? Because we're normally attracted to it. So I think that's a really important statistic or fact that you've shared with us about we don't know what all those ingredients are when it comes to fragrance. And so just being conscious of it, we're not saying don't do it, but we're saying be aware of how much
for transparency, right?
Yes.
We don't turn it. if we see fragrance listed on a brand that wants to work with us, we ask for them to send us what's called an inky list, meaning everything that is under there. And of course, we go into NDAs. We're not going to give away people's information, but we want to make sure that there's the big baddies aren't in there. The things that are phthalates, the endocrine disruptors, etc. But to your point about fragrance, it's also in everything. It's ridiculous, right? You look at it and you see how much fragrance a female is exposed to in their daily routine versus a male, and it's staggering, right? You add up what we're washing and conditioning our hair with, our styling products, our moisturizers, our essences, our eye creams, our deodorants, our body lotions, and by the time you're actually putting on your fragrance to wear for the day, forget about it, right? Like we've just put on so many different potential harmful, best case scenario lung irritants, worst case scenario endocrine disruptors.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's quite graphic with what you just shared. Because when you think about that, right? Like I'm even thinking through my own morning routine, right? And I had a client who actually turned me on to native products. Yeah. Which I love, right? Because it is more clean or conscious. They still use a lot of plastic, but it is a more conscious brand. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, what else do I have that has fragrance, right?
And then you start to look and all of a sudden your foundation has it, your bronzer has it, your lip gloss has it, and you're like, why does my lip gloss have added fragrance? Like I don't need to swallow that. Like what is happening? Like that, and it took me, a beauty industry expert, right? 17 years to even look at it. So what chance does the traditional consumer have to really question
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because again, to where we started out with this conversation, we are so conditioned around beauty. And so that takes us into marketing. So what role is marketing actually playing on what we're choosing? Right?
It's a really big conversation that we have internally in our company. First of all, I have a 5-year-old daughter. So
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I am super conscious of what images she is being marketed. What is she being told subliminally is beauty? Yeah. And it is still very much this Eurocentric standard of beauty. Yeah. And it's heartbreaking. First of all, my daughter is not, fully Caucasian. So she's considered as an other in terms of the beauty industry still, right? Like it's staggering when you walk the beauty aisles and it's just Eurocentric. And then there's this small little subset of we embrace all ethnicities. And you're like, why is this less than 10% of what's in the beauty aisle? This is insane because this does not reflect the actual world.
Well, I was just going to say, who is the true consumer here? Who's a melting pot?
Yeah, and I understand. I sit here as a very pale, blonde Caucasian saying this, right? But it's staggering just in terms of the images that are being chosen to be used. And then when you stop to think about the majority of beauty brands are owned by one of 5 large corporations. On those corporate boards, less than 3% of them have women as chairs. Yeah. So you're having these pictures and these images and these standards chosen, and no offense, I love men, but I do not think they should be the ones in charge of choosing what is beauty, what is beautiful. I believe that women should have a seat at that table.
No, I totally agree on that. Yeah. Not just in the beauty world, but in many
in everything, right?
Healthcare, everything, because
everything
we have we have skewed it to be more money focused versus what's best for the greater good. And
it's a patriarchal concept versus a matriarchal society.
Yeah.
And we all know that most prosperous societies, as history has taught us, are matriarchal based. But that is another conversation.
That is a whole other conversation. We'll do that one, Susannah.
We will do that one together. So that's where we start. First of all, is are they, really embracing all skin tones of beauty? Let's start there. And then also, are they marketing from a basis of fear, or are we celebrating beauty? Because any woman who has ever gone down a makeup aisle or visited a makeup counter understands that majority of beauty brands are telling you there is something wrong with you that must be fixed immediately for you to fit in, for you to succeed, for you to land the love of your life, for you to get the promotion, for you to be a high-functioning female in this world. You must fix it all. Yeah. And that is not what we are about. We are about beauty as an expression. We are about beauty as a celebration. We are about really taking care of yourself. If it feels good to you to do
it
at night, and it is actually proven that taking a few moments for yourself and touching yourself through a facial massage is giving your body signals that you are worthy, that you care about yourself. There's a lot to that. I don't care what product you use to do it. I don't care if you just use water to touch yourself and tell you you're beautiful, right? But we should be doing that. Now, I can recommend a couple products along the way if you want to have a better sensorial experience than just water, okay? But using a lipstick to, you know, make you feel more joyful, using eyeshadow to make you feel more fun and playful if that's your thing, that's where the marketing of the brands we partner with really focus. And then, of course, lastly, we do not work with brands that use women who are not real. So
sorry, say that again.
Women don't work with brands that use women or models that aren't actually real. So the rise of AI is very much a thing.
Oh,
so
100%.
Using a completely, if a brand is using a completely artificial representation of what a woman should be based on a computer's idea of beauty, what chance do any of us, with our gorgeous flaws, because flaws are what makes us sexy.
Exactly.
That's the real. What chance do any of us have in seeing ourselves in a brand? So we're very, very adamant about no AI technology being used in marketing either.
I love it. I love it. And the average consumer would not even realize that that's happening. You would not know that. Right. And I mean, and we've even seen a few examples lately of celebrities being, you know, I think just this week, Scarlett Johansson, they had taken her voice and used it for something. Taylor Swift, there was a whole, you know, issue around that. Yeah. Like the whole AI thing, like that's another conversation of its own.
Yeah. And one of the top influencers on Instagram is computer generated. Isn't it? A human.
Like how sad is that? Not even a real human being.
When you look at the picture. So, but I do think that society, we are very smart, we are very savvy, and I do think there's going to be an interesting backlash to all of this as it continues to happen. And I think there's going to be a demand for real representation of real, right?
I love it. I love it. And Susannah, I love what you were sharing just a moment ago about, and this is really important, and I want us to echo this a little bit about the importance of seeing yourself for who you are, scars and all. You're a beautiful human being. Show that to the world. And so often, as women in particular, we tend to make ourselves small. We don't play big, and you know, do things that make you feel good, right? Like, because when you're feeling good, that's sexy, that's beautiful, right? Like, it's so important.
You vibrate when
you vibrate, exactly. And don't be afraid to tell another woman. I was in a store the other day, and this woman walked past me, and my daughter thinks I'm crazy, right? And I walked up to her and I said, I just have to tell you, you look so beautiful today. And the look on her face, she went, oh, thank you. Like it just stunned her, right? And it took nothing for me to just acknowledge, like, you are, because she was radiating, to your point, she was vibrating at such a high frequency in her own skin. And anyway, I think that's such an important thing that you've shared.
I do, and I love that you do that. I think the most essential thing as humans is that our need to be seen, whether it's just by one person or by, you know, somebody walking by you. But I am a big believer in random compliments. I think
absolutely,
they're awesome. Compliment bombs, I like to call them.
Exactly, and I'll share this one too, because sometimes, sorry, I know I'm going down a different rabbit hole, but I was walking in Toronto. And I'm walking down the sidewalk, and there was a homeless person sitting on the side of the road, and it happened to be in the winter, and I had on this long red winter coat, and we made eye contact. And as you know, I mean, a lot of times, because we have a lot of homeless, unfortunately, in all across North America, and most of the time people just head down, don't make eye contact, but we made eye contact. And she looked at me and she said, you are so beautiful in red. And it just warmed my heart, right? And I was like, now here's a person who has thousands of people walking past her every day, not making eye contact, nothing. And the kindness that she demonstrated, like, it doesn't take much for us as a society right? Like it blew me away. I was like, wow. And it made me start to be even more conscious of who are you passing on the street? You don't know, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I digressed a little bit.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's beautiful.
So back on track for a second. So we've talked about marketing, we've talked about being conscious with respect to what products we're consuming, what we're looking at. How does a conscious beauty retailer, how do they compete in this multi-billion-dollar industry?
Yeah, so for any brand, conscious beauty or not, to compete, if you are in the retail space, so I'll speak to what I know, which is retail versus direct to consumer.
Okay.
If you are in a retail space, you 100% need education and representation. And yes, that is an easy thing for me to say as the owner of an agency that does exactly that.
Yes.
But there is a reason why I do exactly that.
Yes.
You could have the best marketing in the world. You could be blowing up on TikTok. You could be reaching all of your ideal customers, but you're driving them into a store to buy your product. And when they cross the threshold into a Sephora, into an Ulta, into any retailer, what is in that store is a untrained staff.
Yes.
First of all,
Always.
making not a lot of money, right? So they're not highly invested in your brand. They have at minimum 60 to 100 other brands in that store that they can sell. And they are trained sales teams paid by your competing brands in that store there to do something. It's called line switch. You walk in because you saw this great blush on TikTok. You want to buy that blush. You walk in, this person who's been trained to line switch was like, tell me everything you loved about the blush you saw on TikTok. That's amazing. I'm going to show you one that does the exact same thing. Plus, it's going to clean your dishes, whatever the other hot thing is. And we're like, this is amazing because we're not married to it, right? We just had this 10-second thing we got served that, yes, we do want to be glowier and dewier with this gorgeous new pink coral blush, but we don't care which one it is, right?
Yeah.
So unless you have staff in there training the actual people that work behind the counter or in that Ulta, or standing in there so that you don't get line switch, and really bringing your brand message to life again inside of the retailer, you will not make it. And what happens is sometimes these smaller brands get the chance, they get into a store, they think it's the best thing to happen to them to be picked up by these big retailers, but then they get what's called an RTV because they didn't sell fast enough to earn their shelf space, and they have to take they have to buy all their product back, and companies have closed because of millions of dollars that have been lost. So unless you have a strong education and sales strategy, my advice is always don't do it. Yeah. I have literally had brands pass on Sephora, pass on Ulta, because they know that it will be such a costly mistake.
Yeah.
So that's how you compete, is you go and you get us. Now, sales teams can be very expensive, which is why my agency exists. We have done the hard work, right? And we have a team of over 140 across North America and Europe that we put at our brand partners' disposal.
Nice. Well, and education is everything, right? Like even this podcast today, right? Like you probably have never even thought about beauty from the perspective that it could be toxic, that it could be harming you. You know, and especially our younger people who are trying to get pregnant, like be thinking about, you know, consciously what would be brands that would be supportive and enriching versus toxic to you. So, okay, one last question, because I am conscious of our time. So when did you know that this was your calling, and how would you want to share with others to really listen to that calling?
Wow, that's such a great question. I would say I did not know that I was going to do this. What I did know is that I loved the industry. I was heartbroken by what I found out about it, and then I had a baby at the same time, and then here I was with a 18-month-old during the pandemic, locked at home, listening to Wheels on the Bus for the 100th time.
Yes.
And there was actually a social media app called Clubhouse, where you could go and connect with other people and listen to people talk. And you could join conversations. It was like talk radio. You couldn't see anybody, but you could talk. And all of a sudden I was talking to brand founders of these smaller, independent, conscious brands. that I had fallen in love with, and we were just talking about life and all the things. And as would happen, they would look me up on LinkedIn and they would say, "You did what? For who? Can I call you for 5 minutes?" And I'm locked at home with the 18-month-old. Please talk to me.
Talk to me
for free. So I would start to, just have the real conversations. And I started to see a universal theme amongst these brand founders that were just so high on a pedestal to me. They all felt so alone. They all felt that they were the only ones who didn't have certain things figured out, but they also all had such a strong point of view and were doing amazing things that I couldn't not just like word vomit to them, like, go do blah, 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 blah. And they're like, this is what you need to go do. And then the next question would be like, can you just do it for me? So in all transparency, I thought I was just going to consult. I was just going to make a little bit of extra money for my child on the side. Fast forward 3 years later, and I've retired my husband. He works for me. We have all these people that are here.
Amazing.
And it became an agency. But again, that's, fast forwarding, skipping over a lot of tears, a lot of rocking back and forth in a corner, because how do you figure out payroll? How do you pay people in different countries? How do you follow like tax codes? They don't teach any of this in theater school.
No, they don't.
So I really did listen to the voice of just doing the next right thing and believing that everything was figure outable. I know at the beginning of our talks when I first joined, I'd mentioned to you, I'm a big believer in helping women especially let go of this fallacy that there is a they. That there is a they that know how to start companies. There is a they that know how to run businesses. No, there is a we that if you are super passionate about something, if you're very determined about something, everything can be figured out. And also go hire people that do the things that you don't know how to do. That's my other reason.
Well said.
As soon as you can. I'm very lucky now to have an HR director and a chief strategy officer and, people that handle their divisions and, really do the things I don't know how to do. The one thing I know how to do is talk to people. That's what I know how to do. And surround myself with other great people. But there are definitely a lot of sleepless nights of, believing in the imposter syndromes that they've told us to believe in, which that's not a thing. And also letting go of the idea that you have to balance it all, right? I would say I would leave listeners with this core belief that I have that, balance is BS. That is a term that was developed when women went into the workforce. It was never talked about when only men were in the workforce. There was no need to figure out balance. Men don't know how to do it because they don't do it. Okay?
100%.
We decided that we had to figure out how to balance it to justify wanting careers, right? I believe in harmony. There's going to be times when there's so much going on in your family life that sometimes work is going to be second priority, even if it is your own company. Sometimes it's going to have to wait a couple days. And sometimes work is going to take over and be a priority, and you're going to have to take a call at your kid's basketball game, right?
And that's okay.
It's okay because it's one life, right? Like this is life. Like it can live in harmony together, not feeling like, oh, I can't pick up my phone past these times, or I have to work like I don't have a kid and raise a kid like I don't work. Like, hello, we're going to all go mutually insane together with that pressure. So let's just agree to not pretend.
Well said. Well said, Susannah. I love that. So just to emphasize a couple things that you said there. Work-life balance is a fallacy. It's not true. And work and balance is not 50-50, right? So it's finding that harmony. I love how you described that. But also paying attention to what you're passionate about, paying attention to what are people asking you about. I love how you described how people started calling you and you're thinking, oh, great, I get to talk to people.
Right. I just don't want to listen to Wheels on the Bus.
Yes, exactly. But you've created a multi-million-dollar business from this by paying attention, by being present to what the patterns, the signals are. And the other big one that you've shared is knowing that it's okay if you don't know how to do everything. You have to hire great people who know how to do things and surround yourself with a great team. Early days, you might have to contract some of those people.
That's right.
It's okay.
100%. Yeah. Or call and get some free advice.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Yes.
Lots of support out here, right? The world is big and it's really abundant, and this scarcity mindset that we think that women can't have, yes, we can. Right. We can. It's just choices that we make. right? And how we do it. Love this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, and how can people find you? How can they follow Bright Beauty Collective?
We are on Instagram at Bright Beauty Collective, and we're also on LinkedIn. And then I am also personally on Instagram at Susannah Dellinger, and I'm happy to answer anybody that reaches out. If anybody is in an early stage and has a question of how to get something done, I'm happy to point you in the right direction that we're going.
Amazing. Wow, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to make sure we take a moment and thank our audience for being here today. We know you have lots of choices as to what podcast you listen to. We do our very best to bring you exciting and passionate women leaders and letting them share their stories with you. And if you're curious about your own leadership, go onto our website at www.wilempowered.com. That's one L. You can see there in the background if you're watching this from a video perspective, but it's one L. And take our free leadership quiz. It'll give you some insight as to how you're showing up as a leader in the world. So thank you again, everybody. We look forward to seeing you on the next Will Talk podcast, and have a fabulous day.